Hey guys, welcome back for another video. We got a good one prepared for you today. What we're going to be doing is we are going to completely break down all of our top 25 matchups and give our week 9 predictions for all of our week 9 2024 college football games. We are going to go over every single game, break them down, and give our predictions. Who's going to win, who's going to lose, and what the final score will be. And we'll also touch on the money lines, the spreads, and the over-unders. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. If you have any comments about these games or any other ones, drop them below. Our non-top 25 video will be coming out tomorrow. We go over every single college football game every single week. And we also do the same thing for every NFL game as well. If you are a football fan, if you are a sports fan, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed so you can follow along with us. That's for all the sports topics. So we're looking at our week 9 top 25 matchups. I think we have 14 or 15 top 25 matchups because we do have several top 25 games. The games are becoming more and more meaningful every single week because we're getting deeper and deeper into conference play. So everyone's competition should gradually be taking a step up every single week. Let's go ahead and start breaking these games down. So kicking things off, we have our Thursday game. We have Syracuse coming in at 5-1, potentially just on the outside of being ranked. They'll be playing 6-0, undefeated, number 19 Pitt. This is going to be a fun game. This game is going to be on ESPN. We have Syracuse 5-1, Pitt 6-0. Both of these teams light things up through the year. We have 2 of the top 5 highest passing teams. Syracuse, number 2 passing team in the nation, just behind Miami right now. Syracuse comes in. They have Kyle McCord, the transfer from the Ohio State Buckeyes. Looks like a completely different quarterback in this pass-heavy system. He's lighting it up vertically through the air. He's closing in on 2,200 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6 picks. They're averaging 33.8 points per game. Syracuse, with their offense, they can keep up with anyone. Pitt has to take this orange team seriously. They can match you blow for blow score-wise. They're throwing for 381.7 yards per game, running for 104.3, just averaging just shy of 500 yards per game. Their defense is giving up 24.7 points per game, 241.5 through the air, 121.3 on the ground. So there's going to be opportunities for Pitt to score vertically on Syracuse, but the same is also the other way. Looking at Pitt's offense, they have Holstein, the transfer from Alabama, having a great season throwing the ball, closing in on 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. They average 40.8 points per game. That's top 10 in the nation right now. 321.3 through the air, 175.5 on the ground. So they're more of a balanced offense, closing in on 500 yards. They do give up 23.5, 263.8. So just as Syracuse's secondary will have opportunities to be able to pass on them, the same thing is also true of Pitt. There will be opportunities for Syracuse's high-powered passing offense to find guys open in the Pitt secondary. And they're also giving up 108.5 on the ground. For the Orange, they have Kyle McCord. They have Allen closing in on 500 yards rushing. They have Meeks closing in on 500 yards receiving. Pitt has Holstein. They have Reed. They have Mumfield, both closing in on 500 yards. This game could go either way. Like I said, there's going to be points here, and it could easily come down to just whoever has the ball last in this game. I have Pitt winning a close one in the fourth quarter, 32-28. Then our next one is a Friday night game on Friday, October 25th at 10:30 p.m. It's a late one on CBS. Number 17, Boise State, coming off the bye. They're 5-1. They'll be playing 6-1 UNLV. UNLV was previously ranked. They dropped out when they got their one loss. But if they win this game, they're going to find themselves back in the top 25 game. But there's a lot riding on this game. Boise right now has a 62.1% chance to win this game. They are 2.5-point favorites. The over/under 65.5. Lots of points are going to be scored. Both of these teams can score points right now. Boise, obviously, they have the Heisman, probably the front runner for the Heisman. They have Ashton Gentry in this game. They are going to ground and pound nonstop the whole game with the best running back in all of college football. But UNLV, they can match you blow for blow throughout this game. They have no issue scoring points. But what's riding on this game is the potential front runner for the Group of 5 playoff spot. We know that the 4 conference champs from the 4 Power 4 conferences, they automatically get a bye week. They get in the playoffs. But the highest ranked Group of 5 champion also makes the playoffs this season. Boise's in the driver's seat right now. They are the highest ranked one. They come in at number 17. But you have to keep your eye on UNLV. You got to keep your eye on Army. You got to keep your eye on Navy right now. But if UNLV beats Boise, they're going to catapult themselves up in the top 25 in front of Boise. So that could be the difference maker right here. So Boise wants to make sure to maintain that spot. Right now they have Madsen at the quarterback position, closing on 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks. One of the best offenses in the nation, a top 10 offense. They average 46.8 points per game. They throw for 237.3. They run for 289.8. They have no issues running the ball. Their defense is giving up 26.2 points per game. But look at their secondary. They give up 308.3 passing yards per game. That is awful. It's one of the worst in the country. UNLV will be able to throw the ball at will whenever they want on the Boise State Broncos. UNLV, they also have a top 10 offense. They're averaging 43.6. Lots of points are going to be scored here. Both teams are averaging in the 40s so far this season. They pass for 189.4. They also run for 251.4, and they're giving up 22.6. Their leader is Williams, closing in on 900 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's the one that filled in for Sluka, so he didn't even play the first 2 to 3 games, and he's still lighting things up through the air and through the ground. Boise State, they have Genty, closing in on 1,300 rushing touchdowns. He has 18 touchdowns this season, putting up video game numbers, the best running back performance I've seen since Christian McCaffrey, and they have Cooper catching the ball. And for UNLV, they have Williams. He's a leading passer. He's a leading rusher, and they also have White III closing in on 700 receiving yards. This game could go either way. Lots of points are going to be scored here. Could come down to that final possession. Could come down to whoever wants it more in the end. I have Boise State winning it in the fourth quarter with their run game. They tire out UNLV on the ground. They win this one 38-28. And we'll now move on to our Saturday slate of games. Saturday, October 26th at 12 p.m. on Fox. We have 5-2 Nebraska coming off of getting curb stomped by Indiana. They'll be playing number 4 Ohio State Buckeyes coming in at 5-1. Ohio State coming off the bye week. Previous to that, coming off of that close loss versus the Oregon Ducks, who's now the number 1 team. Right now, the Buckeyes have a 96.6% chance to win this game. They are 25.5-point favorites. I do not like massive spreads, especially in conference games. The over-under here is 48.5. This is going to be a tough game. The reason that I say that is Nebraska, although they got just drug up and down the field this past weekend, they had 5 turnovers. They played awful. They gave up 500 yards on offense. They hadn't give up a rushing touchdown until this past weekend, and boy, did they give up some touchdowns. However, they have an elite physical defense. You can't just score on Nebraska. Yes, Indiana did last weekend, but that's not going to be some permanent thing going forward. This is a very talented team. Matt Rule has a very disciplined squad. They have Dylan Raiola. He's a true freshman. He has some turnovers. The guy's a true freshman playing at Nebraska. That's a lot. He's going to get better every season going forward. You have this guy for at least 3 years. He's going to be extremely polished by year 3. Very experienced. He's closing in on 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns, 6 picks. They average 25 points a game, 259.3 passing yards, 127.1 rushing yards. Their defense, even though they gave up almost 50 to Indiana, they are still on average only giving up 17.7, 220.1 passing yards, 102.9 rushing yards. It's always hard to run on Nebraska. Usually they have a fast, physical, big line. They want to win this game in the line of scrimmage. They want trench warfare, dominate the line of scrimmage. But that's easier said than done versus the Buckeyes. The Buckeyes have Will Howard closing in on 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks. They have a top 10 offense. They average 43.5. They throw for 300.3. They run for 208.7. They're averaging 510 yards per game. Their defense, one of the best in the nation, if not the best in the nation. They're only giving up 11 points per game. They only give up 178.8 yards to the air, 86.3 rush yards on the ground. It's going to be very hard for Nebraska to run on Ohio State. That line is good. They were the number 3 total defense last season. They brought back 8 starters. They added to it through the portal. This team is loaded on defense. They want to make up for that Oregon loss. They're going to come after Nebraska. They're fully rested. They had the bye. Nebraska comes into this game limping. Ohio State comes into this game fully rested on a mission. They want that rematch with Oregon. They want to make sure they make the Big Ten championship. For Nebraska, they have Raiola, they have Dowdle, they have Banks. For the Buckeyes, one of the best offensive rosters, Howard, Junkins, Henderson, Smith, Egbuka. NFL talent everywhere. I have the Buckeyes winning this one, 38-17. The next matchup we're looking at 12 p.m. on ABC. Number 12, Notre Dame, 6-1. They'll be playing number 24, Navy Midshipmen. They are 6-0. This is a top 25 on top 25 matchup. Notre Dame is the heavy favorites here, 91.1% chance to win this game. They are 12.5-point favorites. The over-under in this matchup is 52.5. Now, usually Notre Dame would just beat down Navy and the other service academy teams. That's not going to be the case this year because Navy's actually a really good team. They are undefeated, 6-0 in the country. They have to play them, and they also have to play Army, and these teams can score. Notre Dame comes in this game, they're kind of limping. They have a lot of injuries, especially on the offensive line, but still, they are the more talented team. This team can run the ball. This team plays really good defense. They have a good coaching staff. They have Freeman. They have Golden. They have Denbrock. Right now, the big question is still Riley Leonard. I've been saying since he was at Duke, the guy cannot throw the ball. 55% career completion percentage guy, not an accurate passer. Never understood the praise for him. But what he can do is he's mobile. He can run the ball. Keep the ball on the ground. You have Leonard. You have Love. Run it down Navy's throat. That will help you win the game in the second half. You're going to tire them out physically at the line of scrimmage. You're going to dominate the second half. Right now, the Irish, they average 34.6 points a game. They throw for 197. They run for 209.6, one of the better rushing teams in the nation. An elite top 10 defense, only giving up 11.9 points a game. For Navy, though, they can score. They're averaging 44.8. They have Harbath. He's lighting things up because this is a Navy team that just doesn't run the ball. They can throw the ball this season. He's closing in on 900 yards, 10 touchdowns, only one pick. They throw for 164.3. One of the best top 5 rushing team. They run for 274.8 and a really good defense, only giving up 19.7 points per game. For the Irish, they have Leonard. They have Love. That should be the main guys. And when it's third and long, you have Collins there to catch the ball. For Navy, they have Harbath. He's also the leading rusher, closing in on 700 yards on the ground. He has 20 total touchdowns. This is a team that can beat you multiple ways. If Notre Dame takes this game for granted, like they did the NIU game, they're going to lose it. This is the next most talented team the Irish have played this season, probably next to the Aggies. They need to take this game serious. Notre Dame wants to make the playoffs. They cannot make the playoffs at 10-2, and they have no conference championship like all the other teams have. They have to run the table out. They can do that, but they have to make sure they win this game first, take it week by week. I ultimately have the Irish winning it in the second half, taking this one 33-20. This next game is going to be a fun one. It's going to be a close one. At 12 p.m. on the Big Ten Network, 4-3 Washington. They're going to be playing number 13 Indiana, 7-0 undefeated. Can we get some respect for the Hoosiers? They played Nebraska, a top 10 defense, and they put it on them. This is a team under Signetti that is rolling right now. Right now, they have an 83.9% chance to win this game. They are 6.5-point favorites. The over-under is 52.5. The biggest issue is Rourke, their quarterback, who's been lighting it up, closing in on 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, only 3 picks. He is out this game. That's a massive loss. Now, when Jackson stepped in to fill, he was just fine. The offense continued to click, but they're down their experienced veteran leader. You don't want to underestimate that in this game because Washington actually has a pretty good defense. And now they can game plan for not being Rourke starting out the game Saturday. And Washington has a experienced veteran quarterback of their own. They have Rodgers coming in here, closing in on 1,900 yards. He has 13 touchdowns, 2 picks. Right now, the Huskies, they're averaging 24.1 points a game. That's not great, but they are throwing for 308.3, running for 158.1. A talented team under Jedd Fisch, but he had to completely flip this roster. A lot of guys left for the pros, a lot of guys left through the portal with DeBoer, but they're only giving up 17 points a game. A top 20 defense, they are going to get physical, and now they're scheming not for Rourke, but for Jackson. They got to see some of him last weekend, so how can they adapt the scheme specifically for his talents? Right now, Indiana, the number 2 offense in the country. They score 48.7 points a game. That's in Big Ten play as well. They have 316.6 passing yards, 202.4 rushing yards. They average 520 yards on offense, but with Rourke out, they're not going to be as pass-heavy this game. They're going to keep the ball on the ground. They're going to ground and pound nonstop the whole game, try to wear out Washington, and they have an elite top 15 defense, only giving up 13.7 points per game. Only 81.9 points on the ground. So if Washington beats them, it's going to have to be through the air passing. Right now, Washington, they have Rodgers. They have Coleman closing in on 700 rushing yards. Jackson closing in on 600 receiving yards. And on the other side, you're down Rourke. That's a massive loss, but you have Ellison closing in on 600 rushing yards. You have Schrapp closing in on 600 yards receiving. I have upset. I have Washington pulling off the unexpected upset. It's kind of a leap here, but I have them winning this one 23-20. This game is going to be close, but I think the loss of Rourke is what's going to make the difference, and I have Washington pulling off one of the upsets for this weekend. Our next matchup is an SEC on SEC matchup at 12 p.m. on ESPN. 4-3 Oklahoma Sooners, fresh off of firing Seth Luttrell, completely changing things up on the offensive side. There's a lot of pressure on Brent Venables here, and this is going to be a tough one to win. They'll be playing number 18 Ole Miss, 5-2, coming off the bye. Lane Kiffin's squad is looking to get things back on track after 2 losses in their last 4 games. Right now, Ole Miss has an 88% chance to win this game. They are 21-point favorites here. Another massive in-conference spread. The over-under is 48.5. For Oklahoma, they haven't scored more than 21 points in 5 straight weeks. That is awful. Basically, since they got into SEC play, they've completely fallen off the rails. But I said preseason, there was going to be questions on offense. Right now, they average 22 points a game. They throw for 202. They run for 112.7. They're only averaging 315 offensive yards per game. That is awful. What happened to the offense on this team? They have the number 11 total roster, according to ESPN, that has not panned out on the field on the offensive side, but they still have a really good defense, giving up 21.3 points a game. They are top 10 in sacks right now, but the defense gets wore out. They're on the field the entire game, and the offense has so many turnovers, it constantly puts the defense on the wrong side of the field. They have Jackson Arnold. They have Hawkins. They've been bouncing back and forth at the quarterback position. That's not going to help anything. If you have 2 or 3 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. All of these guys are 4- and 5-star quarterbacks. Nothing is panning out. They have to figure out something. They have Barnes on the ground closing in on 400 yards. They need to generate a consistent running game. That was one of the issues they had last season. Dylan Gabriel was running the ball way too much. They need a running back that can step up. They need a 1,000-yard back. They have Burks at wide receiver. And for Ole Miss, they have one of the best offenses in the country, but it has taken a step back since they came into SEC play. But Lane Kiffin and company, they have to rally everyone, get everyone back on track. Even though you have 2 conference losses, you still have everything in front of you. You still have the opportunity to make that final 12 and make the playoffs. You sit at 18 right now. There's a lot of weeks to make up ground here. You just have to win out going forward. Right now, Ole Miss, they average 41.4, one of the best passing teams. They throw for 373.7. They run for 200.6. So they're still averaging almost 600 yards on offense per game, and they still have a top 10 defense, only giving up 10.6 points per game, only 66.6 yards on the ground per game. Sooners are going to have to beat them vertically through the air, and they just don't have the weapons to do it. I have Ole Miss cruising here, taking this game. Too much talent. Jackson Arnold, Parrish, Trey Harris just shy of 1,000 yards through 7 games. He's lighting it up. Video game numbers. They win this one 34-17. The next game's a Big Ten on Big Ten matchup on CBS at 3:30. Number 20 Illinois, 6-1, coming off of that win versus Michigan. We did have Michigan going down last week. We were not surprised. They'll be playing number 1, the new number 1 team, the Oregon Ducks, 7-0, coming off of shutting out Purdue. Right now, the Ducks have a 91.5% chance to win this game. 25-point favorites. I don't like these spreads. The over-under here is 54.5. The Fighting Illini, they cruise to an easy win versus Michigan. This is a Brett Bielema team. They are physical. They ground and pound. They fight at the line of scrimmage. They have Altmaier closing in on 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns, only 1 pick. That's what made the difference. They play Michigan football, but they actually have a quarterback. They average 29.6 points a game, 237.4 through the air, 146.3 on the ground. They're only giving up 18.1 points a game. But Oregon, they are in the driver's seat right now. They are consistently getting better every single week going forward. I said that's what was going to happen. Started out the season sloppy, but new quarterback, new scheme. The offensive line is playing a lot better, and that defense is cruising. Right now, they're averaging 34.6. They throw for 311.3. They run for 158.3. And their defense is giving up 16.6 points per game. They have the playmakers. They have Gabriel, Jones, Johnson, Stewart. They're going to win this game. Penn State beat Illinois. Oregon is better than Penn State. I have Oregon winning this one 37-18 and cementing themselves as that number 1 team so far. And as a side note, this would be Oregon's third top 25 win, which would be the most in college football. The next matchup we're looking at is a Big 12 matchup on ESPN at 3:30. We have number 11 BYU 7-0 coming off of that close win versus Oklahoma State. Now, I did say last week that it was going to be a close win, that they were just barely going to squeak it out, and they did just barely squeak the win out. That was a close one, but a win is a win. They'll be on the road here versus UCF. After that close win versus Oklahoma State, how does BYU respond? This could be a potential upset game, wore out from the previous week, on the road, going all the way down to Florida. Maybe they're tired, wore out, and they drop this game. Right now, UCF, they come in at 3-4. They had a really competitive game this past weekend. They almost won it themselves. Right now, UCF has a 54.5% chance to win this game. BYU, a slight favorite, 2-point favorite. The over-under here is 55.5. This is a potential upset alert game for BYU. They live off turnovers. If they don't get the turnovers this game, maybe the Knights sneak this one out. Right now for BYU, they have Rhett Slaffy's closing in on 1,700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 picks. They average 34.9. They pass for 249.7. They run for 156.6, and a good defense, a turnover-generating defense. They are only giving up 19 points a game. For UCF, their big issue is quarterback. Jefferson, Brown, no matter who they've shuffled into the quarterback position, they have not been able to consistently punch the ball in the red zone. They're averaging 31.3. They throw for 201. They run for 280.3. One of the better rushing teams. They're going to keep this game on the ground. The ground, hopefully, will prevent turnovers, and they're giving up 25.7 points a game. For BYU, they have Rhett Slaffy. He's also the leading rusher at 265. They don't have a great run game. They don't have a number one top-generating running back that they can go to. Quarterback should not be your leading rusher for a team closing in on top 10 status, and they have Lester. And for UCF, they have R.G. Harvey closing in on 900 yards. He's a top 5 running back. He just has no quarterback to help him out right now. But this is a team that can score. They can move the ball. Look for the potential upset here. But I have BYU and that defense. Defense travels on the road. They might be wore out. They need a bye week. But I have BYU taking this one, winning this one closer, 33-26. This next one is an under-the-radar, pretty good one. At 3:30 p.m. on ABC, number 21 Missouri, 6-1, versus number 15 Alabama, 5-2. This is a top 25 on top 25 matchup, and previous, a lot of people might not have given Missouri a chance, but now they're definitely rethinking that right now. Right now, Bama is the favorite. 82.2% chance to win this game. They are 13.5-point favorites. The over-under is 56.5. Looking at Missouri, they had Cook got hurt this past weekend. He came back from the hospital fourth quarter, led Missouri to that close win. Right now, the Tigers have a top 30 offense, a top 30 defense, physical team. They have Cook closing in on 1,600 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick. He's not having the season he had last season, but this is still a very talented team. They're averaging 31.7. They throw for 261.7. They run for 172.3. Very balanced offense, and their defense is very good, giving up 15.6 points. Again, that's exactly what Alabama doesn't want to hear. They don't want to play another good defense. This is an offense that has not been moving the ball, but mainly they haven't been getting push on the offensive line. Saban teams used to dominate the line of scrimmage. That's not the case for Alabama on either side of the line of scrimmage. Right now they have Milroe, who's kind of played sloppy the last few games, but he's the leading passer as well as the rusher. He's closing in on 1,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 picks. They're averaging 38.1. They throw for 276.6. They run for 164.3. But that defense, this is the worst Alabama defense statistically since 2004. They're giving up 21.3 points a game. They're not physical. They're not owning the line of scrimmage. A un-Saban-like statistic right now. And ESPN has them as the number 1 overall roster in all of college football. They have to get this ship right. They cannot afford to drop to 5-3. So they're 5-2 right now. Another loss knocks them out of playoff contention in the first year of the expanded playoffs. That would not be a good first year for Kalen DeBoer. Now, it is understandable. He does have to flip this roster to what he specifically wants, but he still should be able to go 10-2 with this season. Right now for Missouri, they have Cook. They have Neal. They have Weiss Jr., Burden. Talented skill position players for Bama. They have Milroe, Miller, Ryan Williams closing in on 700 yards, but they don't have that 1,000-yard back. They use Milroe too much to run. I still have Alabama winning this one, 30-17, but it's going to be close because Missouri has a good defense. You have to respect that. The next one is also a ranked SEC on SEC matchup at 4:15 on the SEC network. Number 5 Texas Longhorns. They come into this game 6-1. They were number 1. They dropped it to Georgia. That was a tale of two halves. Awful first half, so-so second half. But this team is going to be looking for revenge, and they're going to be looking for that at number 25 Vanderbilt. 5-2. Texas has a 90.6% chance to win this game. I've been saying since Vanderbilt beat Alabama, they should have been ranked. The committee's been holding them out of that top 25 this whole time. They finally put them in the top 25. They deserve it. And unfortunately, their first week in the top 25 at number 25, they have to play an angry, pissed off Texas Longhorns, who's probably going to beat them bad, and throw them right back out of the top 25. That's just unfortunate. That's what they did to them. But it is what it is. Texas is the favorite here, 18.5 point favorite. The over-under is 53.5. We already said Texas is coming off of that loss. They were rolling. They hit their first speed bump. It's their first loss of the season. Everything is still in front of them right now. They're still the second highest ranked SEC team. They have Ewers closing in on 1,200 yards. He has 11 touchdowns, 4 picks. He has missed a lot of time, but this is an offense that finally met some resistance. How do they respond after that loss? Georgia had a loss. They responded. Bama's still trying to respond to their 2 losses. So how does Sark and company get everyone back on track? They have the number 4 roster. They are loaded. They will be able to rebound here. They average 39.1. They throw for 308-point run. They run for 166.1, and an elite top 10 defense, giving up 9.7 points a game. For Vandy, they have Diego Pavia having a great season so far. He can run it. He can throw it. He can scramble. He's closing in on 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns, 1 pick. They average 33.1 points per game. They are passing for 214.4, running for 162.1, and they have a pretty good defense, only giving up 22.1 points per game. For Texas, Ewers, Wisner, Bond's their primary weapon. He is healthy right now. For Vandy, they have Pavia. He's also the leading rusher, closing in on 500 yards on the ground, and they have Stowers closing in on 500 yards receiving. Vanderbilt is good enough to make this game competitive. You don't want to sleep on them. They did beat Bama, but Texas should be able to roll here. I have them owning the first half, but Vanderbilt does get some second half points. But Texas wins this one 38-20. And our next game is one of the best historical matchups in college football on ESPN at 7 p.m. 1-6 Florida State versus number 6 undefeated 7-0 Miami Hurricanes. Right now, Miami has a 91.4% chance to win this game. The over-under is 54.5. Florida State, wow, they started out the season top 10. Now they have to win out just to make a bowl game. The odds of that happening, pretty slim. They have so many issues on offense. They are 21-point favorites here. That's a massive spread for an in-state rival. Florida State hasn't scored more than 16 points since week 0. That is bad. They have to do something. They have to do something to generate some type of points here. Thankfully for them, Miami's given up over 30 points for 3 straight games, so maybe that will open up something. Miami's weakness is their secondary. There's been guys running wide open for weeks, but as they've gotten into ACC play, the competition has gotten better. There's been teams that have been able to exploit that more often. Miami has a great defensive line. That weakness is that secondary. Florida State has to attack the secondary, but they just don't have the weapons. They don't have a quarterback who can consistently distribute the ball to their playmakers, whether it's DJU, Luke, Glenn. They don't have any quarterbacks. If you have 3 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Mike Norvell, this is your roster. You have to own it. You have to get someone at the quarterback position. Right now, Florida State comes in. They're averaging 15 points a game. That's bottom 10, bottom 5 in all of college football for a team that had a top 15 roster, supposedly. They are throwing for 220.3, running for 72.9. Their strength on offense was supposed to be their rushing attack. They're only averaging 72.9 yards per game. They give up 210 through the air, 25 points per game, 172 on the ground. Their defensive strength was their D-line. They're getting torched for 180 per game, basically. For Miami, they have Cameron Ward, the Heisman hopeful, closing in on 2,600 yards. He leads the nation in touchdowns, 24 passing touchdowns, only 4 picks. They average 48.3 per game. Number 1 offense in the entire country. Out of 134 teams, you have Miami, and Florida State is bottom 5 right now. the top passing team in the country, passing for 400.6 yards per game. They run for 188.9. They are averaging just shy of 600 yards per game. They give up 22.6 points per game, 92 on the ground. Florida State, you got to attack the secondary no matter who your weapons are. You have Lawrence, you have Douglas. You got to get the ball to them in the secondary. Miami, Ward, Martinez, Fletcher, Lyle, Allen, Restrepo, George, Horton, Arroyo, Williams. The list goes on and on and on. So many weapons. The number 10 overall roster, according to ESPN. Cameron Ward has 27 total touchdowns. They are on a mission. They have to win out. They want to win out. They want to be rolling by the time that they potentially play Clemson in the ACC Championship. I have Miami winning this one, 45-17, and getting some things with their defense back on track here. And our next matchup is a under-the-radar, really competitive Big Ten game on NBC at 7:30. Number 3, Penn State 6-0 versus 5-2 Wisconsin. Wisconsin's actually been moving the ball pretty consistently the last few games, kind of rebounding, but they have a great staff under Luke Fickell. Right now, Penn State has a 70.1% chance to win this game. They are 6.5-point favorites. The over-under here is 47.5. Penn State is fully rested right now. They are averaging 34.2 points a game. They have Drew Aller, 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks. 3 of those were in the USC game. They averaged 277.2 through the air, 201.2 on the ground. One of the best, if not the best, 1-2 running back punches in the country. It is either Penn State or the Buckeyes. They are loaded in the running back room. And their defense, a top 10 defense, giving up 14.5 points a game, and they're top 10 in sacks. They only give up 185 through the air, only 94.8 on the ground. This is a stacked team for Franklin. They're going to make the playoffs this season probably, but Wisconsin's going to put up a fight. So Locke, he is closing in on 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's filling in for TVD, who did get hurt earlier this season. They're averaging 29 a game, playing a lot better the last few games. They averaged 219 through the air, 194 on the ground. Getting back to more of that Wisconsin-style football. Phil Longo keeping the ball on the ground and pound. They've been running all over people, and they're bringing in a top 20 defense, giving up 17.6 points per game. That's what's going to make this game competitive. Is it's 2 really good defensive teams. Whenever you have that, it could come down to 1 possession, 1 turnover. For Penn State, they have Aller, Singleton, Allen, Warren lighting things up at the tight end position. He owned the USC Trojans. And for the Badgers, they have Locke, they have Walker, they have Anthony II. They're both going to be fighting to establish the ground game. Who does it best? Who does it earliest? I have Penn State winning this one, 28-17, but it's going to be a fun game. Our next one is a ranked SEC on ranked SEC matchup at 7:30 on ABC. Number 8 LSU 6-1. They've been cruising since their loss to the Trojans. Defense has been playing really good. They'll be playing number 14, the Aggies. They sit at 6-1. They've also been cruising, getting better every single week since their loss to Notre Dame. Right now, the Aggies are the favorite. 52.8% chance to win this game. They are 2.5-point favorites here. The over-under is 53.5. The reason they're the favorite is because of the ground and pound style of football they've been dominating at the last few weeks. For LSU, they have Nussmeier, one of the best passing teams in the nation, closing in on 2,300 yards, 18 touchdowns, 6 picks. They average 34.1. They throw for 325.9. They run for 128.3. And their defense under Blake Baker has been getting better every week. More physical, better tackling. They're only giving up 20.6 points a game. But the Aggies under Mike Elko, they are becoming more his team every single week. They play defense, and they run down people's throat. Reed, Wegman, doesn't really matter who you put at the quarterback position. Both of them have actually played really good. Wegman's going to get the nod here. He was slinging it his last game. They're averaging 31.4. They throw for 192.6, but they're running for 218.6 yards per game. If they can successfully run the ball on the Tigers, they're going to own the clock. They're going to tire out the Tigers. They're going to own the second half. That's their goal, and they're giving up 17.7 points a game. That's top 20 defense. For LSU, they have Nussmeier, they have Durham, they have Lacey. For the Aggies, they have Wegman, they have Moss closing in on 700 yards. He's going to be the workhorse this game. They're going to run it, and they have Thomas. I have the Aggies pulling this one out in a close fourth quarter matchup, winning this one 30-27, but you don't want to sleep on LSU. They can move the ball. They can sling it. If they get the ball last, they have the passing offense to be able to go right down the field and get a touchdown. So this is going to be a fun game to watch at the end of the night. And our next matchup, some Big 12 rivalry football on ESPN2 at 8 p.m. 2-5 Kansas. What happened to Kansas? They were supposed to be one of those teams to potentially win the Big 12 this season. Now, they're one of the worst teams in the Big 12, but you don't want to sleep on them because you know the talent's there. It just has not been clicking this whole season. They'll be playing number 16 Kansas State, 6-1. They've been rolling the last few weeks. They've been on the road, so they're very happy to be back home right now. They were on the road a couple games, tough matchups at Colorado, West Virginia, but they pulled them out. They won them. They have a 75.2% chance to win this game. 10-point favorites here. The over-under is 55.5. This is an in-state rivalry matchup. You don't want to sleep on it. So right now, Kansas, they have Daniels, who's played an awful season so far this season. He's been healthy, and he's been bad. He was always the go-to guy, but he was always hurt. That's what always kept Kansas from taking that next step forward. He's been healthy this season, but he has not been playing very well. He's closing in on 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks. You got to cut down on the turnovers. That's been a killer. They're averaging 30.4. They throw for 202.6. They run for 214.4. And their defense is giving up 24 points a game. Kansas State, Avery Johnson, the highest recruited player in Kansas State history, getting better every single week. This guy can sling it, but he can run, and he runs with purpose when he moves, closing in on 1,500 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, 5 picks. Played really good the Colorado game, played really good the West Virginia game. They're averaging 33.3. They throw for 214. They run for 222.9. One of the most balanced teams in the country. A physical defense giving up 20.6 points a game. They give up 275 yards through the air. Their weakness is their secondary. Kansas will be able to pass on them. However, they shut down the run game. You can only run for 83.1 yards on them. For Kansas, they have Daniels. They have Neal, a top 10 running back. They're going to try to run on Kansas State, establish the ground game, but very hard to run on Kansas State. Daniels is going to have to step up passing the ball. For Kansas State, they have Johnson. They have DJ Giddens, a top 5 running back, closing in on 900 yards through 7 games. So they can counter Neal with Giddens, and he runs with purpose. And they have Brown. Brown makes big catches in big moments. I have Kansas State winning a close one here. This is an in-state rivalry game. They pull it out 28-23. And our final game, let's wrap it up with an ACC game on the ACC Network at 8 p.m. Number 22, SMU, 6-1. They'll be playing 6-1 Duke. This is a close game. So this is a team that's an under-the-radar ACC contender in the Mustangs versus Manny Diaz's Duke team. They are rolling right now, playing really good defense. Right now, SMU is the favorite. 75.8% chance to win this game. They are 11.5-point underdogs. The over-under here is 48.5. For SMU under Rhett Lashley, they've been cruising. Stone stepped down at the quarterback position. Jennings has filled in perfectly. He can throw, he can run. He's closing in on 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, but he's also running the ball, and he's fast. Right now, they're averaging 40.7 points a game. That's a top 20 offense. They pass for 248.3. They run for 199.6, and they're also playing really good defense, only giving up 20.6 points a game, only 87 yards on the ground. But Duke, this is Manny Diaz's team. You know they're going to play aggressive, fast defense. They have Murphy at the quarterback position, closing in on 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, only 5 picks. They average 25.9. They throw for 223.4. They run for 112.4. And they have a top 20 defense, only giving up 17.3 points per game. It's going to be SMU's offense versus Duke's defense. Who's going to give? Duke wants to win this game. If they get to 7-1, they're going to find themselves in the top 25 next week. But SMU, they don't want to drop their first conference game here. They have Jennings. They have Brashard Smith, who is the transfer from Miami. He's closing in on 700 yards. They have Maryland. And for Duke, they have Murphy. Thomas also closing in on 700 yards rushing, and they have Moore closing in on 500 yards receiving. This is offense versus defense. It's going to be a fun one. I have SMU ultimately pulling this one off, winning this one 30-20. So that's our breakdown. That's our predictions for all of our Week 9 college matchups for the 2024 college football season. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you have any comments about these games or anything else, make sure to drop it below and I will respond. Thank you.